Today, our story takes us to Japan, where we zone in on the Asuka period. This period is dated from 538 AD to 750 AD, and a lot of change happened in Japan during this time. There are many interesting aspects to focus on about this period, but today we're focusing on the four most notable women in this period. Each of these formidable women left their mark on Japanese history in several disciplines such as art, religion, and the political landscape itself. They set up foundations in the Asuka period that still hold influence over Japan years later. Empress Suiko. Our first heroine of the Asuka period is none other than the first empress of Japan herself. Suiko was born Princess Nukuta, and she was the daughter of Emperor Kinmel and his consort Soga no Kitashihime. Her father had many children, but none were ultimately able to hold the throne for long, some being taken away by natural causes or by assassination. After the assassination of her husband, Emperor Sushin, there was a vacancy for the throne that needed to be filled. The clans finally decided that the only one who could be able to take the throne was her. In 592 AD, Nukuta ascended the throne and became Empress Suiko. As soon as she took the throne, Suiko had to quash the political conflict that started back in her father's time. This particular conflict all started with the introduction of Buddhism. The clans were used to their traditional religion of Shinto, which is the religion of ancestral worship and worship of nature. Instead of brushing it aside, Empress Suiko recognized the religion of Buddhism and built many temples. This act inspired many Buddhist monks to leave the Korean peninsula and come to Japan. This in turn affected the arts, culture, science, and technology that Japan now had access to. Empress Suiko was able to use this new technology when she built a new palace in Oharita no Miya. After the new palace was built, the empress decided it was also time to change the political landscape. During this time, the empress had decided to get back in contact with their Chinese neighbors. She took inspiration from their political structure. The product of this inspiration was the 12-level cap and rank system. This system was made so that court officials had to wear a cap that was colored and decorated according to their rank. Each cap corresponded to a high or low version of one of 6 Confucian virtues, which were virtues of benevolence, propriety, sincerity, justice, and knowledge. Before this change, rank had been decided on a hereditary basis, but this new system was more self-reliant. The empress also made the 17-article constitution. This article promoted the morals and virtues of the subjects of the empress. All these decisions had been influenced by the empress's admiration for Chinese culture and their political landscape, but she didn't let her admiration affect her national pride. She was once reported to have sent a letter to the Chinese emperor, Emperor Yang, saying, "From the sovereign of the land of the rising sun to the sovereign of the land of the setting sun, may good health be with you." The emperor was, of course, offended by those words, but he was impressed with the demeanor of the envoy that delivered the message. His response could have been more aggressive, but he also had to consider the situation at that time. During that period, Emperor Yang was planning to have a war with the Goguryeo kingdom, so in response, he only sent back an envoy of his own. The consequence of this was China treating Japan as a sovereign state. This whole event itself was a political maneuver by the empress. Originally, the empress had started sending envoys to China as a way to bring back Buddhist teachings and sutras to Japan. Later on, these missions become a way for the empress to get more information on the Sui dynasty's government system, legal system, and taxation system. Japan was also able to scope out the political situation in China, which is how the empress knew exactly when to write that particular letter, to the emperor calling herself a sovereign. While getting information from abroad, the empress also didn't forget to control the situation in her lands. She made sure to keep a balance between Buddhism and the original Japanese traditional religion of Shintoism. Shintoism could not be abandoned because it had long been used by Japanese rulers as a bulwark for state affairs. On one hand, she seamlessly added Chinese cultural elements to Japan, and on the other hand, she balanced Buddhism and Shintoism to prevent religious conflict. At the end of her dedicated 35-year reign, Suiko decided to be buried in a quiet ceremony. She made this decision because she wanted more resources to be spent on her people instead of a grand funeral for herself. This decision showed that she died just as she had lived, always thinking about the country. Empress Saimei. The second empress to ever take the throne of Japan is also number 2 on our list. This empress had a much more chaotic reign than her predecessor Suiko. During many ups and downs, she took the throne not once, but twice. Before we get into the deep details of all that, let us start at the beginning. Saimei, at that point known as Princess Takara, married Suiko's successor, Emperor Jomei. After about 10 years on the throne, Jomei passed away, causing another succession crisis. To avoid more turmoil, the clans asked Takara to take the throne. She ascended the throne and became Empress Kogyoko in the summer of 642 AD. The same year, a serious drought hit the city. The leaders of the clans prayed for rain with no success. Empress Kogyoku took matters into her own hands. She set up a tower in the region of the Asuka River and prayed for rain there. Soon after, heavy rain fell on the land. Even though things seemed to have settled down and the time of prosperity seemed to be on the way, things became even more chaotic in the kingdom. The Soga clan, which had been a prominent clan supporting the throne even during the time of Empress Suiko's father, Emperor Kinmi, was the source of the conflict. Soga, no Emishi. The right hand of Empress Kogyoku built a house overlooking the palace and then insisted his children be called Miko, a title only given to children of the royal family. This, in turn, caused his son Iruka to become arrogant and even came up with a plan to assault one of his rivals, Prince Yamashiro. Not satisfied with only this, he drove Yamashiro and his family to their deaths. Prince Nakano-Oe, Empress Kogyoku's son and a possible successor to the throne, worried about the Soga clan's increasing power and decided to come up with an assassination plan to get rid of Iruka during the visit from an envoy of the Korean peninsula. The plan was a success, with Prince Nakano-Oe doing the deed himself and having his troops surround the Soga residence. Due to the turmoil of losing his son and his current situation, Soga no Emishi ends his own life. This incident was later called the Ishii incident. Empress Kogyoku felt that her rule was up and asked her brother Prince Karu to take her place. Prince Karu was crowned Emperor Kotoko, and his first act on the throne was to create the Taika reforms to stop something like the Ishii incident from ever happening again. This reform took the power of private ownership of land and people away from the clans and the imperial family. From now on, only the state which represents the emperor had this power. Even though the former Empress Kogyoku, now with the title of Sumemyo Yano Mikoto, a title given to a former sovereign, gave her full support to the new emperor, the two factions still had conflicts, causing her and her daughter to leave court. Not even a few years on the throne, Emperor Kotoko died with disappointment. Once again, the former empress took the throne and changed her name to Empress Saimei. With renewed passion, the empress created a construction plan that turned the city of Asuka into a cosmopolitan city. This was made possible by Japan's newfound riches in the form of stones found unexpectedly during those years. The empress also decided to build a canal that was criticized by her court, but later on was found to have two practical uses, which were to irrigate fields and to form a moat that would deter enemy invasions. The empress was very concerned with the defense of the country. She even decided to organize a naval expedition herself to aid the Baekje kingdom of the Korean peninsula. The empress crossed the Seto Inland Sea and went as far as Tsukushi, present-day Fukuoka, before she died there, before ever getting to her destination. The sudden death of the empress sent shockwaves through the empire, and her great plans for the navy were put to a halt. This empress's life ended the same way she lived, unexpectedly and chaotically. Just like Empress Suiko before her, her dying wish was to be buried simply. Her great love for her nation and her ability to do anything to keep the country going set her apart. Empress Jito. The next empress on our list is a woman with a great political mind. She is the daughter of Prince Nakano Oe, later Emperor Tenji, who became emperor after the death of his mother, Empress Saimei. This in turn makes Empress Jito fittingly enough her granddaughter. The circumstances of her birth in itself were peculiar. After her father had effectively taken a victory over the Sogano clan during the Ishii incident, he did an about-face that same year and took Soga no Ochi no Iratsum as a consort, and they had the future Empress Jito, then known by her birth name, Sarara. Later on, when she was 5 years old, her father conspired against her mother's father, Soga no Ishikawa, and he was later forced to take his own life to prove his innocence. Her mother, overcome by sadness, fell ill and died. To make her story even more complicated, later on, she married the same man as her sister, Prince Wama, in the form of an arranged marriage. After her sister, Princess Ota, died in her 20s, she became Wama's main wife. During the years that followed, she started to show her political intelligence. For example, once her father fell ill and planned to pass the throne to Owama, she read the atmosphere of the court. She warned Owama against it, already suspecting that his opponent, Prince Otomo, would get his supporters to charge Prince Owama with treason if he accepted. Wama declined and became a monk, exiling himself to Yoshino, taking only Sarara and his children with him. In the aftermath of the death of Emperor Tenchi, Prince Owama and Prince Otomo had the biggest imperial succession civil war called the Jinshin War. Even though Prince Otomo was named as the heir, he still feared Prince Owama's power and influence and planned to get rid of him. Prince Owama was also planning his rebellion, and Sarara served as his wings with her sharp mind. She advised him to get the clans on his side, and that would be his key to victory. He got the support of the local clans of Issei, Mino, and Owari around Yoshino, and closed off 2 strategic routes when Otomo tried to send his arms into Yoshino. Eventually, Prince Owama was able to claim victory, and Prince Otomo ended his own life. In 673 AD, Prince Owama ascended the throne and became Emperor Tenmu, and Sarara became Empress Consort. The emperor started by making several reforms as soon as he took the throne. He took the power from the hands of the clans and put more into the hands of his family members. He came up with plans to move the palace, a favorite move of his predecessors. Sarara was there to plan with him and actively accomplished all the goals that they had planned out in Yoshino. They planned so far ahead that they even made 6 of their sons swear by a pact named the Yoshino Pact to always support each other. This pact was also used to name a clear successor and avoid any future conflict like the Jinshin War. They both decided to make Sarara's only son, Kusakubi, the heir. Tenmu and Sarara planned out everything, but they couldn't have predicted Tenmu's death before most of his plans had been realized. The Empress Consort. Sarara was devastated and was hit with an even bigger blow when her only child, Prince Kusakube, passed away suddenly also. Sarara was overwhelmed by grief but decided to move forward to complete her and her husband's dreams. In 686 AD, Sarara became Empress Jito. She was the first woman to become Empress Regent by her own decree. Empress Jito took the throne and completed all of her plans, including moving the capital to Fujiwara-kyo in 694. She also forbid the moving of the imperial palace when a new ruler takes the throne. She also started the Shikinen Sengo ritual that involves rebuilding the shrine buildings at Izujingu Shrine every 20 years. This ritual still takes place in Japan today. After the completion of a whole new capital in Fujiwara-kyo in 701, she introduced Japan as a brand new national superpower to the other nations. Her envoys called the news to the Tang dynasty's China and firmly established themselves. She abdicated the throne and her grandson became Emperor Manu. Before her death, she left her final will to be buried next to her husband to bring him news of all their plans being fulfilled. Lady Nukuta. The 4th woman on our list may not be an empress, but her talent for poetry is in a league of its own. Unlike the other women, her origins don't have many details to it. The only thing we know of Lady Nukuta is that her father was Prince Kagami. He is a prince that we have almost no details on, and we have no idea how he was related to the royal family. All we know is that she was born in a time near the end of the Asuka period, and was full of chaos shortly after the Ishii incident when Empress Saimei, known as Empress Kogyo, at the time was the reigning empress. She was also one of the consorts of Prince Wama before he became Emperor Tenmu. After giving birth to her daughter Princess Tochi with Prince Wama, she joined the court of Empress Saimei and was with her when she went on her naval expedition to help out the Korean peninsula kingdom of Baekje. She was said to have written a poem that boosted the soldiers' morale. The poem goes like this: "At Nikitatsu, we have waited for the moon before boarding our boat. Now the tide is in at last. Come, let's go rowing." She wrote this poem about the soldiers waiting for the tide to come in so that they could set sail. Now that the moon has brought the tide, it is time to move along as planned. Nothing is stopping them now. Another instance of writing poems to sway feelings was when she wrote a poem about Miwa Mountain, when the capital was changed from Asuka to Omi, and the people were unhappy with the decision that Emperor Tenchi had made. Do you dare to hide on Miwa Mountain in this way? At least you, O clouds, should have greater heart than that. What right have you to cover it? She wrote this to express her unhappiness about the clouds covering what the people at the time considered to be a holy mountain, expressing the people's feelings about the capital change in a subtle way. She was also known to have written romantic poems, most of which seemed to be speaking of Emperor Tenchi himself. She was always by his side, and they could have developed a mutual affection. One poem she wrote for him goes like this: "While waiting for you, my heart is filled with longing. The autumn wind blows as if it were you swaying the bamboo blinds of my door." Emperor Tenji's poem, "The Three Hills," is thought to be about Lady Nukuta and the relationship between him, her, and Prince Awama, her first husband. The poem goes along the lines of, "Mut Kagu strove with Mount Minyash for the love of Mount Unebi. Such is love since the age of the gods. As it was thus in the early days, so people strive for spouses even now." Lady Nukuta played an important role in telling the history of the Asuka period through her poems, because she lived during the period of the three empresses on our list. Her poems were beautiful and filled with feeling through all the stages of her life. We will never know what happened to Lady Nukuta, with her death being a mystery just like most of her life. The detail we are sure of is that her life was one filled with poetry. The Asuka period was a period of great change for Japan, and the women on this list were an essential part of that. They used their wisdom and courage to build the foundation of Japan as it is today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Time Lens with us, where we went back to ancient Japan to learn about some fascinating women. Please like and subscribe for more content.